Stephanie White didn't just resign. She detonated a bomb under the WNBA by accusing referees of outright corruption. After the Indiana Fever semifinal battle against the Las Vegas Aces, White stood in front of cameras and said what players and fans had whispered for years. The game wasn't lost on the court. It was stolen by the whistle. A lopsided free throw count. Replay reviews that seemed tilted and whistles that bailed out the Aces again and again pushed her past the breaking point. For a coach to call the league's integrity into question is rare. For her to resign right after doing it turned the playoffs into a scandal. Her accusations instantly changed the narrative. Instead of celebrating the talent on display, the spotlight fell on officiating. Lexie Hull, who gutted out the series with resilience and big performances, suddenly had her moment overshadowed. Aaliyah Boston, the rookie phenom whose defense against Iowa Wilson forced the league MVP into struggles, saw her efforts erased from headlines. The story wasn't their grit or their skill. It was that their work meant nothing when referees tilted the floor. If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe. Fans weren't just frustrated. They were furious. On social media, clips of questionable calls and missed fouls circulated faster than highlights, feeding the idea that this was incompetence. It was rigging. The outrage grew because it wasn't new. Past years have had their own officiating controversies. This time, with record-breaking audiences tuning in, the cracks couldn't be ignored. Analysts pointed to a disturbing pattern. Stars like Wilson were being protected, while teams like Indiana were left fighting the refs as much as their opponents. Even neutral observers used the word robbery. White's demand for a league-wide investigation wasn't just a call for accountability. It was a declaration that the credibility of the league itself was on the line. And yet, league officials stayed silent. No press conference, no statement. Nothing to ease the growing suspicion. The absence of a response was damning in its own way. Silence suggested that protecting the league's reputation mattered more than facing the possibility of systemic bias. Meanwhile, the Fever's legacy players like Hull and Boston, who should have been remembered for their resilience, instead became symbols of a league where fairness was negotiable. White's resignation framed this as a turning point. The WNBA is in the middle of unprecedented growth, with rising stars driving fan engagement and media attention. But growth means nothing if fans believe outcomes are manipulated. White's exit wasn't just about one playoff series. It was about exposing a deeper rot. By leaving, she forced the league into a corner. Either confront the corruption accusations head-on, or risk letting the narrative of bias and mismanagement define this new era. The Indiana Fever versus Las Vegas Aces series should have been remembered for Boston's defensive masterclass, Hull's resilience, and Wilson battling through adversity. Instead, it's stamped as a moment a coach chose resignation over complicity, and the league's integrity was dragged into the spotlight. The Indiana Fever were supposed to be the story of the WNBA playoffs. Young, hungry, and finally clicking at the right time. Players like Aaliyah Boston dominating in the paint. Lexie Hull fighting through injury. A team that had heart, grit, and belief. But instead of celebrating that narrative, we're talking about something else entirely. Something that's threatening the credibility of the league itself. Because when the whistle blows and the refs step in, they're supposed to call the game, not control it. But in this case, they did more than just control it. They altered it, twisted it, and in the eyes of many, including the Indiana Fever's own head coach, Stephanie White, they rigged it. That's not a vague accusation. That's what White said, out loud, on the record, to the media, and then she walked away. Stephanie White didn't just lose a game. She lost trust in the system. And her resignation? That was her final statement, one the league can't sweep under the rug. Her words were clear. The officiating was biased. The calls weren't just bad, they were deliberate. White cited the free throw discrepancy. She called out the missed fouls. She questioned why the Aces star seemed untouchable, while the Fever got buried under whistles. It wasn't frustration. It was conviction. And she wasn't alone. Fans saw it too. Analysts pointed it out. Social media blew up with clips of missed calls, rigged replays, and game-altering decisions that seemed to lean one way. Always one way. The Aces got the benefit. The Fever got the penalty. This wasn't a one-off mistake. This was a pattern, and it didn't go unnoticed. Stephanie White demanding a league-wide investigation wasn't just bold. It was unprecedented. Coaches don't do that unless they feel cornered, unless they believe nothing else will change the outcome, unless they know they're being ignored. And in this case, she was absolutely right. The officiating in the Indiana versus Las Vegas series wasn't just inconsistent. It was a storyline. Missed fouls, phantom calls, a missed replay challenge that killed Indiana's momentum in Game 3. The kind of officiating that turns playoff basketball into performance art. That takes competition and turns it into theater. That moment should have been about Lexi Hull battling through a back injury, scoring 16 points and grabbing 10 rebounds. About Aaliyah Boston locking down Aya Wilson, the league MVP. About Indiana's full-throttle defense and full-arena energy. Instead, it became a referendum on whether the game was even fair. And when a coach like Stephanie White speaks up, that says everything. Coaches know the rules. They understand the stakes. They don't throw out accusations unless the evidence is overwhelming. And yet, the league said nothing. No investigation. No public response. No accountability. Just silence. That silence has done more damage than any bad call ever could. Because now, it's not just the Fever questioning the system. It's the fans. It's the analysts. It's every player who watched that series and wondered, if the refs can dictate momentum, what are we actually playing for? The numbers didn't lie. The free throw disparity was massive. The foul calls disproportionately impacted Indiana's defensive rhythm. Every time the Fever tried to claw their way back, a whistle stopped them cold. Stephanie White saw what was happening. She tried to fight for her team. She tried to speak the truth. But when the league ignored it, she walked away. Because if the system doesn't want to be fixed, then there's no point in pretending it's fair. Her resignation wasn't weakness. It was protest. And the response from the WNBA? Still nothing. No referee accountability. No statement acknowledging the controversy. No leadership stepping up to even pretend they're listening. The players deserve better. The fans definitely deserve better. Lexi Hull's performance in Game 3 should have been legendary. She played through visible pain. She defended, rebounded, scored, and left it all on the floor. And yet, she was buried under officiating that killed any chance of comeback. The story of that night became about missed calls, not her heroics. Aaliyah Boston completely neutralized Aya Wilson and still couldn't get a whistle to go her way, despite dominating the matchup. The calls didn't reflect the game being played. Every aggressive play by Indiana was called a foul. Every physical play by Vegas, play on. The players did their job. They competed. They showed up. It was the officials who didn't. This is part of a deeper pattern. The WNBA has long had issues with officiating inconsistencies, missed calls, questionable replay decisions, moments where fans and players alike are left wondering who's actually in charge. This latest controversy isn't an isolated event. It's just the most public one. And the league's silence? That's not neutral. That's a stance. That's a decision to protect the image instead of protecting the sport. Right now, the WNBA is growing fast. New fans are showing up. Ratings are breaking records. Stars like Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and Angel Reese are bringing new energy. This is the moment to prove that the league can compete with the best. But growth without integrity is meaningless. If fans don't believe what they're watching is fair, they'll stop watching. If players believe the outcome is predetermined by refs or league agendas, they'll stop trusting the system. And if coaches believe their words don't matter, they'll leave, just like Stephanie White did. This league doesn't just have a scandal on its hands. It has a credibility crisis. The stakes are clear. Either the league steps up, addresses this head-on, and commits to transparency, or it risks everything it's built. The trust, the momentum, the belief that this league is more than a niche, more than a stepping stone, more than a marketing campaign. It's now or never. Because if the WNBA lets this moment pass without action, if Stephanie White's resignation is swept under the rug, if Lexi Hull's sacrifice is ignored, if fans are left hanging, then it's not just a bad look. It's a breaking point. Let us know in the comments. Was Stephanie White right to speak out? Should the league launch an official investigation? And how does this controversy change your faith in WNBA leadership? Make sure to subscribe for more coverage of the biggest stories, the boldest moments, and the truths that the headlines try to skip over. Because when leagues go silent, we keep talking. Stephanie White said it best. If no one else will stand up, we have to. Stephanie White didn't just walk out of the building. She walked away from a broken system. And she did it loud enough that the entire WNBA could hear her footsteps. Her resignation wasn't a quiet, end-of-season decision. It wasn't the kind of move a coach makes to pursue other opportunities or take time with family. No, this was a coach walking away because the league she worked for refused to do its job. Because after watching her players give everything, she saw the officials take the game away, and the league let it happen. And when White stood up and called it what was corruption, bias, rigging, there was no response. Nothing. That silence told her everything she needed to know. And when a coach with her experience, her credibility, and her commitment decides that staying is a waste of time, it should terrify the league office. Because Stephanie White isn't the problem. She's a warning sign. She saw it firsthand. Aaliyah Boston, the rookie sensation and future of the franchise, played some of the best defense of her career against Aya Wilson, the reigning MVP. Wilson couldn't get her usual shots. Boston smothered her, took away her space, disrupted every drive. And yet, despite all that, Wilson kept going to free throw line. Every time Boston got physical, foul. Every time Vegas needed a bailout, whistle. Meanwhile, the Fever were taking hits all game and couldn't buy a call. Lexi Ho got knocked to the ground repeatedly, and the refs just looked the other way. Kelsey Mitchell drove into contact, no whistle. Even obvious plays where replays showed clear fouls, no review, no accountability. And then came the free throw numbers. Vegas, 40 attempts. Indiana, 9. You don't need a coaching certification to understand how absurd that is. That kind of imbalance doesn't just happen. Not in a playoff game. Not with two physical teams battling it out. It doesn't pass the eye test. It doesn't pass the stat test. And it definitely doesn't pass the smell test. Stephanie White saw it in real time. She didn't need to review tape. She knew her team got robbed, and she said so. That's courage. That's leadership. That's refusing to let a flawed system write the final word on your team season. And instead of being applauded for holding the league accountable, she was left standing alone. No support from the front office. No backing from the league. No statement from officials. Just crickets. Meanwhile, fans were watching. Analysts were tweeting. Former players were speaking up. Everyone saw the same thing. And yet, the league's silence made it worse. Because when the WNBA ignores a controversy this loud, it sends a clear message. Image over integrity. That's the real scandal. Not just the officiating. Not just the calls that went against Indiana. But the fact that the league allowed a head coach to resign over a rigged game and didn't even blink. This is a league trying to scale up. More TV deals. More fans. More investment. And yet, when a veteran coach demands fairness, they let her walk out the door without even pretending to care. That's not growth. That's rot. And now, the question isn't just about Stephanie White. It's about every other coach, every other player, and every other team who saw what happened. If White gets punished for speaking out, what does that mean for the rest of them? If officiating is allowed to decide playoff outcomes, what happens next season? What happens when it's Caitlin Clark on the receiving end? Or Angel Reese? Or Aaliyah Boston again? What happens when players and fans stop believing that the result on the court is real? Because this isn't just about one series. It's about the credibility of the WNBA. You can't sell competitive basketball when the competition is clearly slanted. You can't build fan trust when games are decided by referees and protected behind closed-door silence. You can't talk about empowering women in sports if the women calling out injustice are the ones getting pushed out. Stephanie White tried to stay quiet. She coached through the regular season. She led a young team to a playoff run that nobody expected. She developed stars. She fostered culture. She built something. And when the league failed her team in the most public way possible, she had a choice. She could have done the PR thing, said nothing, taking the fine, given the no-comment interview. Instead, she told the truth, and when the league ignored it, she left. And let's be honest, the Fever weren't just outmatched in Game 3. They were outwhistled, outmanaged, overruled by forces they couldn't control. And the tape proves it. Review after review fell one way. Vegas was allowed to play physical. Indiana was penalized for breathing wrong. That's not playoff basketball. That's performance. It doesn't matter how good your players are if the officials are running the show. And here's the part that should really scare the league. Fans care. They're watching. They're talking. They're analyzing clips and breaking down calls like it's their job. This is in 2010, when you could sweep bad officiating under the rug. This is the era of instant replays on social media, of fans dissecting foul counts and score discrepancies before the post-game show even starts. You can't fake fairness anymore. You have to be fair, or you'll lose the trust that makes your league matter. This was a chance for the WNBA to show leadership, to address the issues, to support its coaches, to fix a problem before it spiraled. Instead, they let a coach walk away. They let her take the fall for a system she didn't create. And they still haven't explained how a playoff game turned into a public scandal. Lexie Hull played through injury. Aaliyah Boston dominated the MVP. The Fever gave their all. And yet, they were robbed. Not by talent, not by fatigue, but by a system that refused to protect them. Stephanie White said what needed to be said. And now, her absence says even more. The league has a choice. Keep pretending. Or start fixing. Because this moment isn't going away. This isn't just a bad week of headlines. This is a turning point. Either the WNBA takes a long look at itself and commits to transparency, fairness, and accountability, or it risks becoming a league fans don't trust and players don't believe in. That's the real cost of silence. That's the real risk of ignoring coaches like Stephanie White. The resignation of Stephanie White didn't just close a chapter on a single playoff series. It cracked the foundation of a league that's been clawing for mainstream respect. And now that foundation is shaking. Because this wasn't some anonymous assistant coach quietly stepping away. This was a head coach, in the middle of the playoffs, stepping to a microphone and saying, the game was rigged. When's the last time you heard a professional coach use that word? Not bad calls. Not inconsistency. Not, we'll look at the film. She said the refs rigged the outcome. And the league's response? A blank wall of silence. That silence speaks volumes. It says, sit down. Be quiet. We'll protect the image, not the integrity. And if Stephanie White's resignation didn't make that obvious, Lexie Hull's sudden disappearance should have sealed it. This team, this Indiana Fever squad, wasn't just fighting to win games. They were fighting for legitimacy, for respect. And when they were met with whistle after whistle, replay reviews that made no sense, and a 40-9 free throw disparity, they didn't back down. They said, no more. Stephanie White gave that frustration a voice. She stood there post-game and dared to say what fans were already yelling from their couches, what analysts were too cautious to call rigged, and what the WNBA has refused to even acknowledge, that officiating in that series didn't just influence the outcome, it decided it. And the fact that she's no longer with the team, that's not coincidence. That's retaliation. This is the same WNBA that's been celebrating its record-breaking season, its surging popularity, its new generation of stars. And yet, the second someone in the inner circle speaks truth to power, they're out. So let's ask it straight. Is there really space in this league for accountability? Because when coaches resign over corruption and players like Hull vanish after speaking up, the message becomes crystal clear. Speak up and you're done. And look, people can debate a foul call. That's part of the game. But this went far beyond a single call or even a bad night. This was systemic, predictable, one-sided. Go back and watch Game 3. Watch Boston play textbook defense. Arms straight up, clean contest, and still get tagged with fouls while Wilson barrels through and gets rewarded. Watch the Fever's fast breaks get called dead by phantom whistles, killing momentum. Watch that challenge that everyone saw should have been overturned, ignored, and watch Vegas walk to the free throw line 40 times. This wasn't about experience. It wasn't about poise. It was about power. and who the referees decided should win. And now we're left with the fallout. Stephanie White is gone. Lexi Hull is out of sight. Aaliyah Boston, one of the league's brightest young stars, got denied her breakout postseason moment by a parade of whistles. And the WNBA wants to pretend none of this ever happened. They're hoping the season moves on, that fans forget, that media stops talking. But let's be clear, this isn't going away. Because fans noticed. Because this isn't 2002, where bad calls disappear with the final buzzer. We have the footage. We have the side-by-sides. We have the foul count breakdowns, the timing of the whistles, the social media outrage. The receipts are in, and the longer the league stays silent, the louder the outrage gets. You can't build a league on slogans and branding alone. You build it by proving, every single night, that what fans are watching is real, that the outcome is earned, not gifted, that players win or lose on the court, not because a ref swallowed a whistle or blew it on command. Stephanie White knew that. That's why she spoke up, because when she looked in her players' eyes, after they gave everything, she couldn't justify what had just happened. That kind of integrity is rare. And when the league turns its back on people like her, it loses something it can't get back. Trust. So what now? Where's the accountability? Where's the referee report? Where's the investigation? Where's the commissioner stepping up to say, we hear you, and we're going to make this right? Because if that doesn't happen, we already know what comes next. More silence. More vanishings. More games with outcomes that feel scripted instead of earned. And then the fans leave. The ones who actually cared. The ones who wanted to believe this league was different. So we're asking you, should the WNBA launch an investigation? Was Stephanie White right to resign? And how do you restore trust once it's shattered? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you're just as tired of the silence as we are, subscribe for more no-spin breakdowns of the drama, dysfunction, and truth behind the scenes. Because if the league won't talk about it, we will.